Time for the Property Podcast, where every week tens of thousands of property investors, new and experienced, join together to get news, knowledge and laughs at our expense. With me, Rob Bence.
And me, Rob Dix. Join us every Thursday morning for your weekly dose of property ideas and motivation. Then head over to our website at thepropertypodcast.com to keep the conversation going. Now though, let's get started.
Welcome to the Property Podcast. It is episode 52. I'm Rob Bence. With me is Rob Dix. This week, we've got a very special guest. We've got Noah Kagan on. And if you want to get to the show notes on this episode, make sure you go to thepropertyhub.net/Noah. Rob, we are super excited about having Noah on the show.
Yeah, it's going to be quite an interview. This is not one for all the family. That's all I'm going to say. If you've got kids with you, you might want to usher them out of the room. There might just be some elements of this, perhaps every third word, that are not suitable for them to hear, but it's going to be a great interview. So this is part of our series on business. So the whole concept is that property is a business, and so we're going to take lessons from people who are our business heroes, learn what they've got to say, and then sort of talk about how you can relate them back to your property business. So we kicked it off in episode 50, Rob and I. We then had Dan Andrews last week. What a great interview that was. And this is going to be another brilliant one as well. We've got a few more to come afterwards. It's a really, really great series. We're enjoying it. Hope you are as well. And this particular episode this is probably the booking that we were the most surprised that we got, because you might not have heard of Noah Kagan, but you've definitely heard of the companies that he's worked for.
Yeah, I mean, Noah is huge. I've told you in episode 50 to go and Google the guy. He is incredible. Some of the stuff he's done is outrageous. You have to be, a certain type of person to have been as successful as Noah's been. And you'll see, Noah is not your traditional business guy. He speaks his mind. He's very out there. He is really, really interested in some of the concepts he talks about. He's not afraid to speak the truth. So that's why we were so happy when he agreed to come on the show, because, Noah's a seriously busy guy, and he told us that he only says yes to about one interview a month, and he gets asked every single day, several times for interviews. So we were really, really happy that we got him on the show. Remember, you can get to the show notes at thepropertyhub.net/Noah. And also, we recorded some secret questions as well, a secret session. You can get those secret questions by signing up to Noah's mailing list for his blog, OK Dork. It's a great blog. Rob and I read it every time there's a new post. We're in there because the quality of the stuff he comes out with is fantastic. Noah was right at the top of the list when we were brainstorming names to invite onto the show, because we both read his blog. So you should sign up to his blog. But if you do, it's free to, but if you do, you also will get the secret questions we've done with him as well. If you think he is blunt in the main interview, wait until you get to the secret questions. That is definitely not for children.
It is not. So get the little ones out of the room, and hopefully you've done that, because let's get over to our interview with Noah.
Okay, so Noah, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. We're going to jump into some questions. There's so much to ask you, and we've given our audience a bit of a preview about who you are and what you're about and all the things you've done. But to dig back into your story, I wanted to start with Intel. And you worked for Intel, but only for a few months before leaving corporate life to go and join a startup. That startup, a few people might be familiar with, is Facebook. So why did you leave, the corporate professional life? Everyone pats you on the back for being with that type of company, to then go and join a startup like Facebook. What was the motivation there?
So I worked at Intel actually about a year and a half. A lot of people have different ambitions, right? A lot of people want freedom. And what I realized that what most people want is really just to enjoy their job. They don't mind if they have a boss or not. They just want to be able to enjoy their work and have meaning and get paid reasonably well. And so I've always had this ambition to start my own thing. And so I was about to quit Intel, and I think having a day job is one of the best things ever. I'm very non-risky. I think a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, you have to quit and put up your house. And I'm like, in this day and age, you don't need to spend any money. And I discourage people to spend money for when they're starting a business. And I just started two as examples in the past few months that I'm happy to share with your listeners. I started businesses on the side, and then eventually, before I quit to kind of start doing those businesses more full time, I saw that Facebook was open. And it was still small at the time. It was, maybe less than 10 million people, still in colleges. My parents were definitely disappointed. They weren't offended, especially because I got a salary bump. Most funded companies will actually pay you more than your corporate job. I think what's one of the takeaways for your listeners and for myself was looking at products or businesses or services that I really enjoy myself. And that was something that I used addictively like everyone else was in college. And I just had a great feeling that this is going to be something special and I want to be a part of it. And I think most people kind of are looking for opportunities like, oh, how do I make money? How do I make money? And if they actually took a step back and said, all right, well, what am I doing already a lot that I like or that other people respond well to and I enjoy? And so, as I did that, I was like, well, Facebook was kind of a no-brainer for me to be a part of.
And then you applied that same philosophy again with Mint, right? Because Mint rejected you at first, but you loved the idea of it so much that you made sure that you got hired anyway. How did you do that? And what was it that you loved so much about it?
Man, you guys really did your research. I'm like, you know my story better than I do.
We're pros.
You are very good. You're very good. And plus, everything you say sounds smart because it's got a great accent. I love the British accent. It's so, a woman, I don't even care. Man, woman, that accent just turns me on. Luckily, this is a podcast, not a video cast. So, after Facebook, I kind of just was just hanging out. I was doing some consulting. I was in Korea teaching business. I was kind of exploring different ideas. It was kind of a similar concept. A friend of mine, Dave McClure, who runs 500 Startups, said, hey, come check out this Mint thing. And at that time, it was called My Mint. And I met the founder before, and I wasn't super interested in going and meeting with him. Just different personality clashes. He was a little more arrogant than my taste. And I went in and saw the product, and I was just like, holy, this is going to change the world. Over time, me and the founder, became to respect each other, and I definitely, admire what he's done and has accomplished. And so with Mint, what was amazing for me is I think, why I thought I had to be a part of it, and I'll tell you how I became a part of it, was one, I'm really into personal finance. And you can make Jewish jokes, and I always make Jewish jokes, but I'm into personal finance. Everyone, think about the market size, 100% of people want more money. There's not one person that doesn't want more money, and it's completely free, right? So it's like, how is this not the greatest thing on earth? And so the only job available was a director of marketing. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take that job. And they're like, no, you don't get that job. And I wasn't qualified at all. I've never done marketing before in the traditional sense. A lot of times what I encourage, we have a program called monthly1k.com, which shows people how I started businesses and they could do it themselves. What I did was I said, you try to create a no-brainer for the person you're trying to work with. So I was talking to Aaron and I said, hey, what if I create a marketing plan? Don't pay me for it. But if you like it, I'll execute it for 90 days paid. And if you like the results for 90 days, then you can offer me full-time with equity. I'm going to go and work for a week. He has nothing to lose. And so I came back with the exact plan of what I would accomplish in 90 days. And what most people do is they come and ask for things. Hey, can I have a job? Hey, you should just give me stuff. But if you actually reverse the situation and you go to them with something that's valuable to them, it makes it much more likely that they'll at least be open to it. And then you make it a no-brainer where hey, if he doesn't like the plan, there's no loss to him. He could just delete that email. But I went the extra step, which most people just send in their resumes or a LinkedIn or whatever the hell it is. But I went and brought the plan, and then I executed it for 90 days, and it did well, and then, I got the full-time job.
Awesome. So you went from working for 3 major companies in a row to going on to AppSumo. Why did you do that, and where did the idea come from?
So AppSumo is actually the second business, quote-unquote major business for myself that I've done in the past since Mint. So, all along, same with at Intel, and then even at Facebook, and even at Mint, I've always wanted to do my own thing. And so at Mint, I started playing with Facebook apps on the side. After Facebook, I really didn't use that site for about a year because I got let go. And you could read on okdork.com the whole story about me getting let go and not making all this money. People love that story. I don't necessarily love it as much, but it just is, and my life is good regardless. At Mint, I started making these Facebook apps, and frankly, it just blew up. The whole platform opened up, and I think in the first week I had about 1 million installs. So I'm working my day job at Mint, and then literally at night, I'm running this app empire. I was the largest Facebook app developer for the first few months, maybe I think the first 6. And even some of the companies that are large now, like Zynga or Kagan, try to buy me. They didn't even know it was me. But they try to acquire it because I just put fake names, and it was all these sports apps. The Medium story of that, which I think is interesting for people, is never quit until I knew I had revenue from it. And I think a lot of people kind of build these companies, and I think they frankly take too long. They're like, well, I need to wait for the developer. Do you really? Probably not. Oh, I need funding. Do you really? No, you could probably just be a little more creative. And so I've tried to do that with all my businesses. And I forget sometimes to make mistakes, and I end up spending a lot of money and time, which I'm happy to share those stories. But I built these apps, and we ended up just doing well enough that I quit Mint. And I basically, you can read it on my site as well, basically did the calculation of if Mint got bought for a certain amount of money, or if I created my own company, which one would make me more money. So with that being the math, I was kind of like, well, I only have 1% equity at Mint. If I do my own thing, I could probably make more. And then subsequently, I also really want to run my own business and work abroad, which I was able to go do in Argentina. I think one of the things in businesses is identifying your sweet spot. Let's take your podcast, for example. I think one of the things that most people do is they just kind of start putting podcasts out and they just kind of ignore what people are responding to. But what I've done, and I think pretty well, and what I'd encourage any of your listeners to do with their sweet spots is that, like with your podcast, for example, look for the one that's the most popular and then try to understand, why is Noah the most popular? Or why is like Joni Jojo from Northern London the most popular, right? And then, I don't know, I have a bad accent. I'll do more Australian. But then what you do is you take that popular episode and try to understand, why is this one popular and how do I repeat that one? So for like OKDork.com, it was like, oh wow, marketing, people really like hearing from me how I've done marketing pretty well. And then I started doing marketing month now, and that's been one of my highest months ever. Or with AppSumo, it's like, all right, advertising has been the best way for us to grow. Let's not worry about other marketing channels and just do ads. And so with our Facebook apps, we realized that like at the end of the day, we sucked at making apps. There's a lot of neat stories about how we got sued and banned by Facebook and all this kind of jazz. But the short of it was, we realized we sucked at apps, but we were good at like monetization, and we were good at like working with people. And so, not working with people. I hear people say that I'm a people person. I don't know that many people who aren't. But we basically, instead of making apps, we started doing payments for apps. So kind of like the whole gold rush mentality. We'll make the shovels and let everybody else go look for the gold. And so that business ended up doing, I think, like 30 million in our first year, gross revenue. And then obviously it's payments, so the margins are slimmer. But that was definitely an interesting ride. And then AppSumo started, that business is still around. They're doing more advertising now. And then I started AppSumo maybe 6 months after that. I had a consulting gig where, same pattern. I didn't just quit. I found a dating company that would pay me a lot of money for consulting on a product. And then I started AppSumo kind of as just like a hobby. I never thought it would be a business. I never thought it would be where it is today.
It seems like a lot of people have a problem just doing anything, right? Like you've said before that what separates the winners from the losers is actually doing something. You've started multiple things, and you've always started things while you've been doing other things. So you started a side business when you were at Mint, and you started AppSumo when you were consulting. And before any of that, you were doing stuff in college and everything else. A lot of people want to start their own businesses, but they never get going with that. What is it that's stopping most people from getting started when they want to, and how have you avoided that?
We started this monthly 1K.com course, which shows people exactly how to start and get to $1,000 in a business. And it's funny, it's one of the most like taboo things to sell. It's like an infomercial. I'll show you how to start a business by giving me money. And then it's like, well, if you already know how to make businesses, why are you teaching people? And why don't you just do that? And so I did it so I didn't have to teach people anymore. And I could just put it in a course. And the amazing thing was I got to learn the psychology of what's really holding people back from starting businesses. And that's been one of the most valuable things for me with the monthly 1K course. And so some of the things, a lot of it is around fear. Right, that's what's really holding a lot of the people back within starting their business. It's fear of rejection. It's fear of failure. It's fear of not having enough money. It's fear of their friends and family getting embarrassed by them. Or, oh, look, they're trying again and going to fail again. We've created a lot of free products like strangerchallenge.com. There's an app called Failure Games. And we want to encourage people that failure is okay, because that's been one of the biggest mental hurdles in people actually getting their businesses started. So I think that's one of the key things that people really need to work on for starting a business. And, frankly, I still face it too. I started a business a few weeks ago as an example. And, people, oh, well, you're Noah. I'm like, I don't know what that means. But I was afraid of starting, and I avoided it. And, what was funny was when I finally faced the dragon and I faced like this big scary thing and I broke it down to smaller pieces, or I figured out what I didn't like about it and changed it, it became actually a lot more exciting. So I'd say number one, practice fear of failure. Number two, avoid opportunities in terms of just money opportunities. If it's your first time doing something, fine. What happens is a lot of us read blog posts where this guy made $30,000 writing an ebook overnight. I'm like, dude, I should write an ebook overnight and make $30,000. It sounds so easy. And that's very few and far between. And so what I encourage people to do is really stay true to themselves and stay true to a service or a product or something creative that's aligned with historical things. So for me, I have a big mouth with things I like. Like I went to lunch today and I told a friend about it already. And that's what AppSumo is. It's telling people about products that I just think are really cool, right? So it's aligned with the things I've done. The Facebook games and the Facebook payment stuff has never been something I've given a shit about. So I'd say align your interests, not with just making money, but something that you're interested in. And I'd say for a lot of people, if you're uncertain, just start, right? Like, it's so funny. People read more. They're waiting for another book to give them a secret. They're waiting for another blog post to tell them the magic answer. They're waiting for some guru on YouTube or somewhere else to finally give them a secret that'll really unlock everything. And the answer is always within themselves. And so the real challenge is, do you really want it? Which some people are kind of pussies. That's frankly what it is at the end of the day. They don't want to put in the work. They just want the result. If they want that, then they're going to be searching for it a long time. They're not willing to put in the work. But you've got to start the work, and you've got to start small today. So what is, a 5-minute thing you could do towards your business? What I found with most people is when they get their first dollar and they get their first customer, that really shifts their mindset to be like, oh, this is kind of cool and this is fun. And so I really encourage people today, within 48 hours, how can you actually get a paying customer for your idea? And we can do it with any business idea. And guess what? If we can't get the money for it, perfect. Let's move on to something else. And so, kind of wrapping those up, I think the 3 things that people really need to do is start it today, practice their failure, and really do something that they're actually interested in. So I find it easier to persist and sustain when you're like, man, I can't wait to see this exist in the world. And then you get that opportunity to create your dream.
There's a talk you've done before where you talk about having to push through failure, and the majority of what AppSumo does fails, which I found really interesting. I was really surprised at that. You've just mentioned failure then. So how did you become okay with failing? Because particularly in the UK, failing is frowned upon. How did you become okay from it? What can our listeners learn from, failing is okay? And what do you do to make sure you keep failing enough on a daily basis and obviously learning?
I think a few different things off the kind of what that I've noticed over time. So one, sometimes I think about, have I failed lately, or am I scared of anything lately? And it doesn't mean that I should go jump off a mountain or shoot myself in the foot, but I think it's reasonable to say, all right, if you're not scared of anything, if nothing's kind of intimidated you, maybe you're not pushing far enough. And look, if that's not your personality, then that's fine. So that's number one. Number two, I don't want anyone, and nor do myself, to think I'm invincible. I'm afraid of a lot of things. The key thing is to look at situations that haven't gone well for myself and for others and think about what you can learn from that experience. So let me give you an example. The past 2 weeks I've been in Thailand doing a workcation, and then I went to Denver for a weekend for a birthday partying with lots of partying with capital P. And I came back from that and I went to therapy. That's actually something I'd highly encourage, not necessarily a therapist, but someone to just chat with that is just listening and providing feedback. It's not someone biased. What I noticed was I kind of failed my birthday weekend, and Thailand was good, but it wasn't what I exactly wanted. It was good. I wouldn't take it back. Would I call that a failure? No, but it wasn't an ideal situation? No. And so that is kind of a failure. But the key thing that I'm trying to understand is, all right, well, what elements worked in it and what elements didn't? So as I create my next event, or I create my next vacation or my next birthday, how can I improve for that? People are failing every day. They probably don't even realize it. But the biggest thing is how do I learn from that experience and make sure I, eventually get it right the next time? So in businesses specifically, I've done 2 businesses where I spent $50,000 on each in about 6 months on each. And then I finally did this big launch that everyone talks about and no one came. On a business sense, I basically said, all right, well, how do I start businesses without starting any money, without spending a lot of time? And I know that people actually want it. And so that's just kind of more of it's practice where, speaking a language or doing a sport like surfing or skiing or snowboarding. The more you practice it, the more you kind of have an understanding, the easier it becomes. You guys are good at property. That's what this podcast is all about. And I've had this really interesting conversation with myself lately. I talk to myself a lot. And I'm like, Noah, what's up, bro? And I'm like, hey, man, how are you? Good. So here's what happened. I bought a property and I'm like, oh, I love Austin. I want to get more property. And I kind of look at my time allocation, right? So in terms of failure and starting things, and I'm like, all right, I have 5 hours a day to do stuff. And everyone has time. It's all about priorities. We all have the same time. It's just prioritizing. Whether you have a family, whether you're in debt, it's all priorities. And what I realized, though, is that if I spent 5 hours on the internet, or if I spent 5 hours on property, I'd make 100 times more on the internet. And I'd have more fun. That's just what I like, and that's what I've been good at. And it doesn't say to discourage people from doing property, but I think people have to pick and choose to figure out where they're going to really enjoy and focus on creating, right? So in terms of fear and failure, my failure is going to be reduced a lot if I do internet stuff. And so maybe in time, though, I can increase my fear and test new things with real estate. But I found that focus on the things you really enjoy And then as you're failing or things aren't going well, what can you learn about it? One of the key traits I've seen in wrapping this all up, the two key traits I've seen from successful people, number one is persistence. A lot of the losers, I would say, and the people who are never going to have the businesses, even the passive incomes or the, have freedom or be able to travel, like, you guys are in Thailand or I was in Thailand last week, is persistence. And most people just give up way too soon. They're just not willing to put in the work. They're just like, oh, I want it to be easy. Oh, I don't have $1 million tomorrow. That Noah guy said in a podcast, he's rich. How come I'm not rich? I do what he said. And I promise you, like with monthly 1K, or if you put in the work, like if you can do 6 months of hard work, maybe even at least 2 of really hard work, you will at least have something started. You should have profit. If you don't, come talk to me. And the second thing I would say is just resourcefulness. Most people are, and it happens to me too, and I have to remind myself, hey, this isn't working out. Oh, bummer. But I really love and when I see people being resourceful about, oh, this isn't working. How can I get creative with the limitations? So, hey, this property fell through. Or, hey, like I actually bought my property not through a listing, but I saw people renting and I just called them and said, hey, are any for sale? And that eventually is how I got, if I was just looking at listings like everybody else, I would have had to pay more and I might not have even got the place. And so you kind of have to look at how do I be resourceful in that situation? So those are kind of the two things that would help people reduce their fear, reduce their failure.
Yeah, so when you're talking about failure, you're not necessarily talking about some big, devastating, humiliating, climactic thing. It's just trying stuff. Some of that stuff won't work, and then you'll take that as feedback and readjust course.
Yeah, I think fear and failure is inevitable. It's just kind of like, as you're steering your ship, there's a storm, and if you kind of, all right, well, this storm sucks. If in the east it's going to keep storming, let's kind of move a little bit more to the north or to the south. I would also be very cautious of people building up huge expectations. Like if they're starting a business, real estate, personal, whatever it is, don't put so much pressure on yourself to have this big, like, it's like your first night of sex and you're like, it's only going to be like 20 seconds. For me, it was. And so instead, make out for a few days and you do a foreplay and then eventually maybe you have sex and you go for hours. And so what I want to encourage people is don't put so much pressure and expectations that one day, one thing is your only shot. Do little small things that build up. Like AppSumo started out as nothing. And only 4 years later are we starting to, maybe a little bit last year, it's starting to really show like, oh, wow, this is actually a business. But we built up to it. We didn't just like try to drop a big thing the first day.
Yeah. It's probably a lot more fun as well if you're doing something because you want to be doing it rather than trying to have a big hit straight out of the gate.
This is going to sound strange, right? A lot of people want a certain type of lifestyle, either with property or they want it with their job or they want to travel or they want to have a certain amount of money. And it's just not arrogant, but I've gotten the amount that I want. And so what I want people to ask themselves is, what do you do when you finally get there? Like, what do you do when you can work from Chiang Mai like you're doing, Rob? Or Robert, I don't know why you don't get out while the weather's bad, but for some reason you don't.
I just like punishing myself.
Yeah, you're a narcissist. But the point is that, like, instead of just saying, because a lot of people want the destination, they forget about the journey. And the journey is the fun part. The journey is the struggle where things suck. And, like, it still sucks for me. Like, we had this getaway a few days ago for Napa where we invite 10 customers to come work with us for a week. And it's $5,000. It's not cheap. It's a good value for people who want to, like, grow their businesses. But it didn't sell out right away. It sold out in like 12 hours instead of 7. And I know it's, oh, boo-hoo, no, I'm sorry. But the point was, like, I woke up thinking, like, damn, this sucks. But it's the hard part, like, wow, this sucks. All right, how do we work on it and evolve and learn from it and be humble that'll actually make it better for the future?
Totally. Well, one of the things that I know that you've put a lot of emphasis on as well, which makes it kind of easier when you're going through these struggles and you're trying to figure out what's gone wrong and what you can do better, is surrounding yourself with the right people. And that's something that it sounds like you've done very proactively all the way through everything that you've done. What are some ways that you've attracted the right people to you and got that group around you so you can get the feedback when you need it and you've got the support you need?
So let me just give one thing. I'm not going to give a lot of tips. I'll just give one. If you want to meet people that will help you or you can help them, put on events and spend some money. That's it. Go and organize some events, take someone out to lunch, create a lunch and invite badasses around you. Everyone has to eat, right? And be the hub around people that you would like to associate with. I do notice, like with our course, is that a lot of people are isolated. They're in kind of remote places, or a lot of their circle are kind of like losers, or they're not doing shit, so they feel alone. That's why we created a group to help people. But there is someone, maybe not in your field or your friend, but like how many restaurants or stores are there in town? A lot. They all have owners. All those owners want help with things. So create activities or events that benefit those people, and that is how people will want to get to know you, and you'll be able to start meeting more people and filtering out to get to know people. Like when I came to Austin for the first time, I created a Facebook group, said, here's everyone in Austin in startups, and I held a happy hour where I put up $300, and I said, everyone who's in Austin that's a startup, come. And I did this 3 years ago, and that's like, this group's now like 3,100 people. You know, I didn't do it to network. I actually like meeting people. I don't want to, what do you do? But it's provided me as a great hub for Austin and also connecting with, you know, different people in Austin that I want to meet. Basically, the bottom line is create events or take people out for lunch. They'll be the best ROI you'll ever get.
Yep, we're open to being taken out to lunch, that's for sure. If anyone's listening, we're hungry.
I mean, it's funny what a lunch can do, because how many people send you guys letters? How many people actually like go one step above sending you some email asking for something? It's funny how little it takes to actually get what you want. You just have to put in a little bit more effort than everyone else.
The weird thing is, sometimes it sounds like, well, that makes sense, that's common sense, but so few people follow through on common sense principles. They do the same thing everyone else does. When actually, when you step back and think about it, that makes perfect sense. Why don't most people do that?
What I was going to say is most people, what they should do is stop listening to this podcast right now, unless they're in a commute. Even if you're in a commute, stop listening, pause it. No, sorry, Rob and Rob. But like, if you really want to have, not necessarily just the end destination, but the journey, it starts today. It starts right now. So if you've been thinking about a business, text someone, email someone. If you've been thinking about like getting into property and real estate, who is your local guy that you like all the properties for sale? Take him out to lunch. Learn about the different industries, right? Those guys are all going to eat. Maybe go, I don't know if you should just buy a house, but you know, go and do something now and stop waiting for it.
Well, related to that, goals, you've put on OKDork, your blog, that you want to get to 50,000 subscribers this year. So you've set a goal, and you talked about not setting too many goals. And I just wanted to get your take on goals. Why do you think goal setting is important? Why do you do it? And do you think it makes a difference?
Let me ask you guys, how do you stay organized? Like if I give you a list of 10 things, how do you stay organized?
To-do list. So if you gave me 10 things, I put them in my to-do list to do.
What do you use for your to-do list?
Trello.
Oh, Rob, what about you?
Same here. We share a to-do list. So everything we do for the podcast, we organize in Trello and Google Docs.
You guys are like best friends. It's so cute. The point I was making is that everyone has different ways of going about to accomplish the same things. So you guys use Trello to get stuff done. I use Remember the Milk to get stuff done. Other people use pen and paper. Other people might use Evernote. Other people might use a calendar. And they're all about the same thing. What I found for myself is that in accomplishing things, like I like near-term goals that are realistic, and I like very few of them, because a lot of people list a ton of things and they don't get any of it done. List one thing, it makes it much more digestible. It's kind of like driving somewhere. Think about being in London or Thailand. Like if I told you to get somewhere, you would be like, well, where do I need to go? You're like, I don't know, just go, right? You want a destination. It makes it a lot more like, oh shit, I need to get there. Okay, good. Now when you know you want to go somewhere, like from Chiang Mai to Bangkok, let's say, or from London to Manchester. Is that another city?
Yeah.
That is another city, yeah.
Yes. My geography. I think you guys are like, you guys are near Ireland, right?
Yeah, not too far.
Right. So, hey, bloke. No, so if you know you got to get to Manchester from London, right? So now you know your goal is Manchester. Most people just be like, oh, maybe I want to go to Manchester. And then they just start driving. Now, if you just have one goal, get to Manchester, you could say, all right, well, let me look on a map or whatever you want to do and plan out the quickest route to get there. And so this is the same with businesses or with property or with anything in your life that I find helpful for myself. Is sometimes let things be in case sera, but other times it does help if you say, I want to get to Manchester, I've looked on a map and I've planned the route, and that's the fastest way to get there. That happens to me from time to time where like I was in India and I didn't know how to get somewhere the first day, but then the second day I looked on a map and it helped me get there about 4 times faster. And I was like, man, this whole planning thing is kind of cool. And so as I said in the beginning, everyone should try their own things, see what works for you. Like maybe working on like a pen and paper with a smartphone is all you need. And then just figure out what helps you get accomplished that you feel satisfied about.
Cool. Well, no, this has been great. And you've passed your geography test. So it's good news all round.
Yes.
I reckon we wrap up here and we stop recording and we do a few secret questions for people who sign up to your mailing list. How does that sound?
It sounds good. What do you think would be the most juicy stuff people would want to hear?
We've got some ideas. So we were thinking on OKDork, you've listed a load of books that you say have changed your life. So I thought we could ask you for like a few recommendations off the top of your head. We do a lot of book recommendations. It'd be great to get yours. I'd love to know how you do cold reach outs to people. I thought that could be really interesting, and more on goal setting as well. That would be really good stuff for people to get into more. Because again, we talk about goals a lot, and I feel like everyone's kind of doing what you're doing and just kind of experimenting with new ways of doing it. So it'd be interesting to kind of get more detail on the process that you've been through to figure out what works.
All right, that was a lot of stuff, but basically books, goals, and then what was the last thing?
Connecting, cold reach outs to people who can help you.
Oh, those are fun. Yeah. Those sound like 3 good things.
Okay, so we're going to stop this recording right now. And if you go over to thepropertyhub.net/Noah, you can get the secret bit.
Woo!
Wow. Okay. So we told you he was a guy worth listening to, and that was some interview. Noah is a great guy. He was really fun to deal with before the interview and after, and we're really happy that he gave us his time. I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we did. He's certainly a character, but his businesses are fantastic and well worth checking out. One of the businesses he's really proud of at the moment is SumoMe.com. So SumoMe.com. We're using some of the applications on that website on thepropertyhub.net. So go and have a look at SumoMe.com. And if you've got your own website, go and install the applications because they're free, because they'll enhance your website. You'll see them as well if you go to thepropertyhub.net in action. So go to SumoMe.com, and of course, go to his blog as well, okdork.com. And if you sign up for the blog via thepropertyhub.net/Noah, you'll get the secret questions we've just talked about.
Yeah, and there are a whole lot more insights in there. There's another really great section. We're expecting that to last 5 minutes, and then he just kept on giving us more and more great stuff. But let's talk about the key points that we took away from the main interview and start relating some of this back. So, Rob, what was the first thing that stood out for you?
For me, it was doing what you love. Noah said he'd worked for companies that he didn't have passion for, or started businesses that he didn't have passion for. One of his business was a multi-million-pound business, and he didn't enjoy it, so he started something else. Not many people would do that, but Noah put value on his own peace of mind and his own happiness right at the top of the pyramid. That is the most important thing to him. So because he was involved in businesses that didn't make him happy, he did something else that does make him happy. And he said, he doesn't do it for money anymore. He does it because he wants to. And the businesses he has now are because of choice. And that's a nice place to be in. If you relate that back to investment, don't do investments that you absolutely hate. If you hate property investment, but just want the wealth, you probably won't do that well. It doesn't mean that you have to do everything. We've talked before about outsourcing and getting people to help you with the process. But if you hate it to the core and you're doing it just for the gains, then you're probably not going to be successful. Doing what you love and doing what you're passionate about is a great point. Now, it's not saying that what you're passionate about will necessarily be a good business as well. That doesn't necessarily hold true. If you're really passionate about, curtain patterns, then there might not be a big business out there about curtain patterns. I might be wrong. I've started a genre of really research. But you get the point. Your passion doesn't always necessarily mean it's a good business. But if you can find the two and combine the two, you're going to enjoy the process a lot more, and your chances of success are going to be enhanced as well.
Yeah. You might think about, oh, boo-hoo, I was making millions and I wasn't happy. But I totally get it. If it is all about the money, the novelty of the money wears off pretty quickly. And if you're not enjoying what you're doing, then that is not a good place to be. The other thing that I really took away from it was the importance of failing a lot. So Noah certainly hasn't failed overall. He's done some amazing things and he's continuing to do amazing things. But along the way, he's failed hundreds of times in ways big and small. And that was something that I think is really important. Fail a lot, try things and learn from them. So he described it in a blog post as just always being just outside your comfort zone. Because when you're in your comfort zone, you're not growing. So you should just always be trying things. If you're trying new things that you don't know quite how to do, you will fail a lot, but that's okay. You need to try those things and learn from them. And I think that's absolutely critical. It's just getting out there and trying something and not being afraid of what's going to happen. It's like you said in the interview, Rob, failure is very much looked down on in the UK, probably more than it is in the States. But it's absolutely essential because that's what's going to get you the feedback that's going to correct your course. I think Noah made it clear as well that it doesn't have to be big, cataclysmic, embarrassing, awful stuff. Just try something. And he was talking about some things which went okay. He's talking about something that he wanted to sell out in 7 hours and it sold out in 12 hours. That might not be a failure to you, but it was to him. And he learned some lessons from that, which he took forward onto the next thing he did. So it ties back into what Dan Andrews was talking about as well the previous week. Just getting out there and starting something. If you don't start something and start learning from it, then you're never going to get anywhere.
On that retreat he talked about that sold out in 12 hours, not 7. If he'd done it in Europe, I definitely would have gone because it sounded brilliant. It was I don't think the wife had let me go to the other side of America to go on that course, unfortunately not. I don't think I could sell it, especially if she listened to the podcast that we've just done. But Noah, if you're listening, Europe, I'm there. Okay, the next point I took away was build your network. Noah talked about holding events and then being the centre of those events, something Dan Andrews talked about last week, actually. Holding events and then getting people to your party, to your event, and then being the centre of that network and building your network out is going to increase the chances of your success. Now, if you're not confident enough to go and start holding your own events and inviting people around, that's okay. Go to events at the very minimum. You know, we hold events for the Property Hub and the Property Podcast throughout the year. You know, 3 or 4 times a year, we'll have an event on a meetup. So make sure at the very minimum you're doing that. But in your local area, maybe you want to set up a local Property Hub meetup, you know, or a local Property Podcast meetup for the people in your area if we're not getting there quick enough. Feel free. We wouldn't be angry. We'd be delighted. You know, let us know and we'll support you. But the point is, by setting up your own meetups and your own communities, the chances of succeeding are going to be accelerated.
Yeah, I really, really believe in this. And I think this is something that everyone can do. Whether it's starting a blog about something that's happening in your local area or by putting on meetups, like we've created the Property Hub. There's nothing to stop you going and putting a thread on there saying, I live in this place. Does anyone live nearby and want to get together on this date? And you can just start to meet people and put yourself at the center of a scene and build up your network, meet people. You never know what opportunities are going to come from it. You're not going to get anywhere by just kind of sitting around waiting for things to fall into your lap. You have to make some opportunities happen. And so I absolutely loved that point. I think it's really important. And there's a lot more about that as well in the secret section. So if you want to hear that extra bit of audio, go to thepropertyhub.net/Noah to sign up for Noah's list. You'll get that bit of audio. He gets into more detail about how to make that happen. And when it comes to reaching out to people who you want to get help from, he actually breaks it down and gives you an exact format for doing that. So there's so much more valuable stuff in there as well.
There really is. So make sure you go to thepropertyhub.net/Noah, sign up to OKDog, which is his fantastic blog, mailing list, so you'll be updated on his blog, but also you'll get these secret questions. And the secret questions are as good, if not better, than the podcast. He doesn't mess around. He rips apart the email that we sent to him to get him onto the show. Thankfully, he was kind about it. He dissects it piece by piece on why he liked it and why he accepted the interview. So really, really interesting insights in the secret section. Go and sign up for his blog via thepropertyhub.net/Noah. You'll get all that information and you'll get access to his blog too. But next week, Rob, we're really excited. We've got James Schramko on the show. James Schramko, he speaks his mind too, so we're going to have to be careful 2 weeks in a row. But he is a really, really successful guy. He runs a multi-million-dollar business himself, employs over 60 people, and as Rob said, in week 50, he seems to be surfing all the time or, you know, chilling out. So he's clearly doing a lot of things right. We can learn from his systems. So we're really, really excited about his insights to business. And I'm sure you'll learn a lot, but we're looking forward to learning a lot too.
Yeah, that's going to be another great one. So thank you for listening to this episode. If you go over to the show notes, propertyhub.net/Noah, as well as signing up for the mailing list, there'll be a link over to a thread in the Property Hub where we're talking about this episode. We'd love to hear what you think about it and see what you took away from it in there.
Super. Well, that's another bumper episode. I hope you enjoyed it. We really did. That was an event for us, I can assure you. But we look forward to next week and when we're talking to James Schramko. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. Make sure you join our mailing list at thepropertypodcast.com.
And remember, we love 5-star reviews. Rob even loves them more than air miles.